So I've got this little 2-cylinder DEUTZ diesel in the air compressor, and I went down here to use it the other day, and it run like absolutely terrible. And I thought, what in the world's going on with this now? So I'm gonna let you hear it run, and I'm gonna take my little heat gun and I'm gonna shoot my exhaust manifold on both cylinders to see if one's hot or cold. Kind of acts like it's got a valve sticking or something's going on with it, but I'm going to fire it up, let you listen to it, and then I'm going to shoot the cylinder and find out what the temperature is on each side, on each cylinder, and then we'll go from there. Doesn't that sound pretty? We'll take this rocker cover off and see what's underneath it there. Something is absolutely haywire. Yep. So this right here is the intake manifold, and it goes to the air cleaner, and it also goes down to the air compressor. But what I want you to do is I want you to listen to this intake manifold right here when I crank on the engine, and it'll tell you what's going on. Listen to it real close here. You hear that? So we've taken our fuel lines off, our leak off lines off, unbolted this bracket from the front of the cylinder head. Had to get this picking lug out of our way. All the exhaust manifold bolts, they're not coming out. I beat on them, they're not coming out. We're going to remove the cylinder head bolts now. Hopefully we can pick the cylinder head up and slide it back off this exhaust. Get in here and see what we've got going on. But if you don't have a set of these E sockets, this is a cheaper set. This one here is an E24, and it goes all the way down to a number 4. You're going to have a hard time working on this engine if you don't have a set of them. Everything, the intake, exhaust, cylinder head bolts, everything uses this same style. So, just to show you there. We'll rattle this head off real quick, see if we can slide it off of this exhaust pipe and flip it over and see what's going on real quick. So we got 2 bent push rods. If you look down here, I'll show it to you. You can see where the valve actually is touching the top of the piston. You look down in there and you'll see where that intake valve has been touching the top of that piston on both cylinders. See it? Both cylinders. Intake valve touching the top of the piston. Bent 2 push rods. See here where they're bent. Bent 2 push rods. So with these push tubes being bent, we know it's an interference engine, and we know that the valves have touched the top of the piston, so we're going to have to take the head apart. We're going to have to look at these valves and make sure these valves are all good. But I wanted to show you, I put 2 3/8 bolts where the push rods go, here and here. And valve overlap is where the engine hits top dead center. So if you watch when one starts to come down and the other one starts to go up at the same time, that is valve overlap. And right there is valve overlap. And you see that that piston is down inside of that cylinder by 1.5 inches. So we know that the timing belt behind this cover right here is shot, which also drives the oil pump, which also has an idler that, you know, when you buy a belt kit, you put the whole thing in there. But unbeknownst to me, here we go again with another another project. It's a percentage thing. Yep, the more you have, the more goes wrong. So the first thing we're going to want to do is to pin the cam before we pin the crankshaft, because it's out of time. So to make it a little easier, I took the oil filter off, but this little plug right here, little 10mm plug right there, you pull that out and that's where your timing pin goes in. But if you take the oil filter off, it does make it a lot easier to get to that plug. So, but anyhow, pin the camshaft before you pin the crankshaft. That way it's not so difficult. But we'll get it pinned and then we'll come back and we'll pin the crank. You see right there's our timing pins installed in the camshaft. It's all the way in snug. There, our timing pin is in our crankshaft. Piston top dead center. So what we've came up with here is the fact that this anchor bolt right here was loose, holding the idler on, and it let the belt get loose and the belt jump timed. It didn't strip any teeth. All the teeth on the belt look good. A guy could probably reuse that, and I'm not going to. So there's my new timing belt installed, and this is the tension gauge that I use. And I'll tell you, I run it right on the edge of the red and the green. If you get it too tight, you burn up the oil pump. If you get it too loose, it jumps time. But you can see, after rotating that engine back and forth 2 or 3 revolutions in both directions, you can see how tight that belt is. And that's what you're looking for. Sure don't want it to jump time. But I'm going to go ahead and pull my timing pins out on both sides of the cam and the crank. I'll rotate it 2 or 3 times and make sure that that tension stays that tight. If it doesn't, I'm going to go back and tighten it up some more, but we'll make sure it's good and tight. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get the head put on here, and you always want to remember to clean, spotless, nothing on there at all. Got OEM DEUTZ diesel head gasket, push rods, and the same thing with the fire deck on the head. Make sure the fire deck on the head is good and clean and all the oil is out of it, so that when you go to turn it upside down and install it, that you don't get oil down on your new head gasket. So just be real careful with that. Make sure it's good and clean. So this particular engine, the head bolt torque was 30, 60, 90, 160 Newton meters plus 90 degrees. So you can see where I've marked them all. And when I got to my final torque, you take them all to 30, then 60, then 90. And then so on until you get your final torque of 160 Newton meters, and then give them an additional 90 degrees. For this particular engine, the valve lash was 0.3 millimeters on the exhaust and or 0.5 millimeters on the exhaust, 0.3 millimeters on the intakes. So we've got all of our valve lash set, head bolts torqued, fuel lines are hooked up. We're getting ready to, we got to get a new fan belt for it and a few other little things, and then we're going to get her out here and fire it up and let you hear it run. So we put everything back on. We haven't bled the fuel system. I think it'll be fine. We're going to crank it up and see if it runs any better than it did before. Surely it's going to run better than it did before. Let's see what happens here. No smoke, nice and smooth, sounds good. Hopefully next time I go to use it, it don't give me no more trouble. It's a percentage thing. The more you have, the more it breaks down. So, I hope you liked the video, and thanks for watching.